Alaska, land of extremes. This is America at its most rugged, forged over millions of years by geological forces. Here, extreme geology creates extreme weather. It's a deadly combination, making Alaska a dangerous place to live and work. And the impact of Alaska's extremes doesn't stop at the state line. What happens here strikes people around the world. This is the story of nature at its most extreme. Exploding volcanoes, massive glaciers, towering mountains, howling winds, freezing temperatures, devastating earthquakes. Calling Alaska extreme is an understatement. This is Alaska today, America's biggest state, jammed against the Arctic Ocean. 670,000 people spread out over 663,000 square miles of wilderness. That's about one person per square mile. Superimposed on the lower 48, Alaska stretches from Florida to California, from Canada to Mexico. But geologically speaking, Alaska is young and still changing. There are 5 basic parts to Alaska, each extreme in its own right. The North Slope, home to America's largest oil field. The Aleutian Arc, a chain of explosive volcanoes. The Alaska Range, with the continent's highest mountain. The Bering Sea, one of the world's most productive and dangerous fishing grounds. And the southeastern glaciers, made up of trillions of gallons of frozen freshwater. Each part of this epic landscape has its own story of violent forces acting ceaselessly over millions of years. And each part poses a unique threat to Alaskans and to people all over the world. Phase 1 of building the Alaska we know today, constructing the North Slope. The North Slope lies above the Arctic Circle. Because of the tilt of the Earth's axis, for 2 months every year the sun never rises, and the ground never thaws. The North Slope covers nearly 90,000 square miles, an area about as big as Nevada, but fewer than 7,000 people call it home. This harsh environment is better suited to caribou than to people. And like Nevada, this frozen desert receives less than 6 inches of precipitation per year. Massive snowfalls aren't likely on the North Slope. The mountains to the south block all the moisture. But what snow does fall stays and piles into large drifts. Like wind-blown sand, this snow is dry and cutting. A treasure is buried deep below the ice and snow. Liquid oil. 800,000 barrels of oil a day come from the North Slope, 16% of all U.S. production. But extracting the oil can be dangerous. Battling the bitter cold elements has its challenges.
I've been up here when you couldn't even see where you were going. The wind was blowing so bad and the snow was blowing so hard around you. All you were doing was bouncing off the guardrail and bouncing into the ditch. When it's bad, it's really bad.
Today, the North Slope is an Arctic desert with wind-blown snow and sub-zero temperatures. But once, this frozen land was a temperate sea. warm waters filled with prehistoric life. Think dinosaurs, not polar bears. How did the North Slope get from this to this? Nature's most powerful geological force holds the answer: the movement of the Earth's crust. The Earth's crust is cut up into massive chunks called tectonic plates. These plates are in constant motion, shaping and reshaping continents and oceans. Spin the Earth back in time and set the clock at 250 million years ago. Alaska as we know it disappears because of the movement of tectonic plates. What will become the North Slope is a shallow sea filled with microscopic plants and animals. When these organisms die, they fall to the seafloor. There, over millions upon millions of years, they are buried by layers of sand and mud. In a geological pressure cooker, the hydrogen and carbon in the remnants of these creatures are squeezed out, molecule by molecule, transforming them slowly into that precious sludge we call oil. But why the shift from warm to cold? For millions of years, Earth's temperature has swung from hothouse to icehouse in a natural cycle related to the amount of carbon in the atmosphere. 250 million years ago, average temperature on the North Slope is a balmy 68 degrees. Today, it has plummeted to an average of 10 frigid degrees. This ancient sea has been replaced by ice and frozen ground. The oil is still here today, at depths below 3,000 feet. Extracting it without damaging the wilderness is one challenge. Fighting the weather, another. And sometimes it's deadly. Cutting through this frozen former seabed is the only road in and out of the oil fields, the Haul Road. From Fairbanks in the south to Prudhoe Bay at the edge of the Arctic, the road stretches over 400 miles, most of it gravel. Every nut and bolt used to keep the oil field going travels this road by truck. The drivers who run this road face high risks. Every winter, hurricane-force winds slam the slope. The slope is in the direct path of a brutal global weather pattern called the Siberian Express. Many storms start in Siberia and pick up steam as they move east. Because it was once a flat seabed, the North Slope offers no contours to block the wind. At their worst, winds here can reach 100 miles per hour. With wind chill, temperatures can plunge to minus 135 degrees below zero. These are the legendary North Slope blows. On the oil rigs, they call it Phase 3. All but emergency workers must stay indoors. Whiteouts obliterate the road surface. Man-made equipment breaks down. Steel fractures. Exposed skin freezes instantly. Everything comes to a halt. The Haul Road shuts down. Some truckers are waylaid and others stranded for days at a time. Emergency crews work around the clock to rescue them. And the impact of a North Slope blow doesn't stop in Alaska. With help from the jet stream, the deep freeze moves south, and Alaska's chill can travel all the way to the lower 48.
Challenger, go and throttle up.
This Arctic air may even have contributed to one of America's worst disasters. On launch day, January 28, 1986, the temperature at Cape Canaveral is close to freezing.
10, 9, start, 4, 3.
The cold causes undetected damage to critical seals in the Space Shuttle Challenger's booster rocket. 73 seconds after liftoff, Challenger explodes, killing all 7 of her crew. The Arctic cold's contribution to this tragedy is just one example of the lethal reach of the Alaska effect. Extreme events here leading to extreme outcomes thousands of miles away. Extreme weather, extreme geology, and an extreme wealth of natural resources. That's Alaska in a nutshell. The very geology that makes Alaska's economy run makes it a risky place to call home. Over millions of years, the North Slope, the first piece in building extreme Alaska, is transformed from seabed to frozen land. But the tectonic forces don't stop there. Around 45 million years ago, a long chain of volcanoes vaults into the sky. This is the Aleutian Arc. Today, the Aleutian Arc is a string of islands made up of at least 40 active volcanoes, the highest concentration in North America. The Aleutians extend like a spider's limb from the mainland of Alaska. From east to west, they span nearly 2,000 miles. That's about the distance between New York and Denver. This is an explosive part of the planet. Every year, Alaska is rocked by at least one major eruption. In 1992, Spur volcano blows. Alaska's biggest city, Anchorage, is hit hard. Spewing ash shuts down schools and businesses. Jet flights over Alaska are canceled. Cleanup costs soar to the millions. But some Alaskan volcanoes are so remote that few people witness their eruptions. In 2006, Cleveland volcano blows. The ash cloud reportedly reaches as high as 20,000 feet into the atmosphere, where it's witnessed by astronauts aboard the space station, orbiting hundreds of miles above the Earth. The Aleutian volcano peaks can reach over 9,000 feet above sea level. But underwater is where these towers of fire are built. Spin the Earth back 45 million years ago to a time when the volcanoes emerged as an underwater trench. This trench is where two pieces of the Earth's crust, the North American plate and the Pacific plate, converge, and where these volcanoes are born. Where the crusts collide, denser oceanic crust moves under lighter continental crust. As the water-bearing oceanic crust moves down, it triggers the melting of mantle rock, creating magma. Over time, the magma moves up from deep inside the Earth to the surface. The magma can emerge as hot red lava that flows like a river or spurts like a fountain. But more often, it explodes. Volcanoes explode because the magma contains high amounts of water vapor. Picture valves on steam pipes. When the water and dissolved gases in the rock reach the surface, they suddenly expand into steam. Steam is a gas, and its pressure shoots rock and ash miles into the air. Many volcanoes are built from the top down. Rock spews out of the central vent, and gravity brings it down the slopes. The Aleutian Islands begin as underwater volcanoes that over time emerge from the seafloor. Despite the danger, people have lived on these volatile islands for centuries. When a volcano blows, the costs are high. June 6, 1912. 300 miles southwest of Anchorage on the Alaska Peninsula in the Katmai region, Nova Rupta, a nearly 3,000-foot tall volcano, explodes. It's the largest volcanic eruption of the 20th century. At the center of the eruption, the volcano's summit becomes a crater 2 miles square. In a 40-square-mile area around the volcano, pulverized stone piles up more than 600 feet high. Sulfur dioxide makes the water undrinkable, the air nearly unbreathable. Entire forests are stripped clean in an instant. Nearly every living thing in the eruption's path is suffocated by tons of ash. In the town of Kodiak, 100 miles away, roofs collapse under the weight of nearly 1 foot of ash. Buildings burn after being struck by lightning from the ash cloud. Native villages have to be evacuated. Over 100 people board a Coast Guard cutter to safety. It's the largest evacuation ever attempted in Alaska. To put it into perspective, the Nova Rupta eruption is 30 times the volume erupted by Mount St. Helens. Had the eruption occurred in New York City, the explosions would have been heard in Chicago. The sulfur would have reached Denver, and ash would have smothered the entire island of Manhattan. But in the eruption of Nova Rupta, lives are spared. No one is killed in the blast. But the land remains uninhabitable. Even today, nearly 100 years later, ash still covers the area where the volcano once stood. The movement of tectonic plates builds volcanoes. And that very same force is what triggers earthquakes. Stress in the Earth's crust builds as tectonic plates shift and grind past each other. Stress overloads the rock's strength and the plates slip. This releases energy strong enough to rip through solid ground. Alaska covers only about 1% of the Earth's total land area. But because of its position on the tectonic front lines, it accounts for a full 11% of all the world's earthquakes. More than half of the quakes that originate in the United States happen here, as many as 4,000 per year. Most earthquakes in Alaska are minor, barely noticeable by anything but a seismometer. But some are devastating. March 27, 1964, Good Friday.
We're getting another earthquake. We're getting another real shake. Oh, God, there's a bouncing around like a hammer on a hook here.
Alaska is rocked by an earthquake measuring magnitude 9.2. It's the second strongest quake in recorded history. Only the 1960 quake in Chile is more powerful. The quake's epicenter is in the middle of Prince William Sound. It jolts an area roughly the size of Texas. The quake lasts 3 minutes and triggers massive landslides. In a matter of seconds, parts of the ground are lifted up more than 30 feet. In Anchorage, approximately 75 miles northwest of the epicenter, entire neighborhoods are destroyed. A downtown street is torn in half. Thousands of residents lose their homes. 55 miles to the east of the epicenter, the town of Valdez is hit even harder. Underwater landslides cause the entire waterfront to collapse. 32 people die. Southeast of the Kenai Peninsula, 90% of the port city of Seward is destroyed. All told, the Good Friday quake claims the lives of 117 Alaskans. Alaska's earthquakes don't just jolt Alaskans, they affect the entire world. Killer waves, tsunamis, are another chilling example of the Alaska effect. When an earthquake occurs underwater, the shifting of the seafloor may cause a tsunami, a huge wave that can move nearly 600 miles per hour. In the open ocean, a tsunami wave is barely noticeable. But as the tsunami reaches shallow areas near shore, the wave becomes a giant. One of the most powerful tsunamis in history takes place on April 1st, 1946, near Unimak Island in the Aleutian Arc. An underwater earthquake measuring magnitude 8.2 unleashes these killer waves. From the Aleutians, the shockwave of water rushes approximately 2,500 miles south to Hawaii. About 5 hours after the quake, waves 55 feet high crash on the shores near Hilo, a town on Hawaii's Big Island. Flooding reaches a half-mile inland. 173 people die. To guard against all tsunamis, especially those from Alaska, in 1949, the United States launches a Pacific Tsunami Warning Center. Today, seismologists in Palmer, Alaska, keep watch 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. They monitor earthquakes in Alaska and all over the Pacific. They plot where the tsunami waves will travel and when they'll hit. Extreme volcanoes, extreme earthquakes, extreme tsunamis. To live in Alaska's tectonic zone is to live on the edge. And some people choose to get even closer to the heart of this land of extremes by taking on the tallest peak in North America. The same tectonic forces that hurled the Aleutian volcanoes out of the sea around 45 million years ago keep on churning. 5 million years ago, they push up the Alaska Range, a 600-mile-long series of towering mountain peaks. Its centerpiece is Denali, also known as Mount McKinley. Denali means the high one in the language of the locals. Denali is the tallest peak in North America, measuring 20,320 feet. The high one is a lure to climbers from all around the world. On average, 1,200 men and women will attempt to summit during the summer season. But to do so, they will have to confront both geology and weather. From the perspective of the climbers, Denali is so massive it seems to have loomed here forever. But in geological terms, it's a newcomer. Spin the Earth back in time, about 5 million years ago. Where towering peaks stand today, there was once a low-lying granite plateau. Its tectonic forces at work. This time they push a piece of crust called a terrain against the North American plate. Because these pieces of crust are similar in structure, they crash into one another, like two cars in a head-on collision. On the Alaska Range, this process happened rapidly, pushing Denali's summit up around 3,000 feet every million years. And those tectonic forces haven't stopped yet. Denali keeps getting taller by about 3/10 of an inch every year. As Denali grows, so does the number of people who try to reach its summit. Many climbers begin their ascent at 7,200 feet, flying into a base camp on the Kahiltna Glacier. 18,000 feet above the Alaska tundra, Denali's vertical rise is higher than Mount Everest's. Even in the nearly 24-hour sunlight of summer, these mountains stay ice-covered. Climbers must be roped to keep from falling into unseen crevasses. Finding enough oxygen is another challenge. Denali is only around 300 miles from the Arctic Circle. Because it's so far north, the mountain air has roughly half as much oxygen as found at the equator. Shortage of oxygen is one obstacle climbers face. But even more dangerous are the summer's ferocious winds and temperatures of -10 degrees below zero. And in winter, the weather's even worse. That's when Norio Matsumoto comes to the Kahiltna Glacier. Norio is a professional photographer who spends 60 days at nearly 8,000 feet completely alone, living behind a snow wall in a snow cave.
This is pretty small, my size, my Japanese size, so watch out. I make the room up here, so there's a step and the room is up here. I make the cave this way so warm air can stay inside the cave. This is where I sleep, pretty comfortable. Here's my thermometer. It's in Celsius and it shows 13 below right now. Here is the place where I cook, and what I eat is very simple. This is my breakfast, ramen. For lunch, I eat animal crackers. And I don't want to get sick by eating all this ramen, so I also eat some veggies, very frozen, and also I eat sausages. When it's really stormy and windy, I stay inside the cave. It's that strong wind, so I don't want to stay outside. But when the weather is bad, I have nothing to do other than shoveling snow. I do get bored. That's why I have these books. Every winter I bring about 50 books from Japan. It's rare to have this good weather with the sunshine. Most of the time it snows or it's cloudy. A lot of times you cannot see any mountains around here. Right now you can see everything, but when the weather is bad, everything becomes white. Pretty windy.
Norio endures the storm so that he can be there when the winds die down and the lights appear, the northern lights. In the Alaska construction project, the northern lights are the winter work lights. Near the poles, solar winds travel along field lines down toward Earth. This makes the light more frequent here. The northern lights are triggered by severe storms, not on Denali, but on the sun. Solar winds traveling up to 620 miles per second are deflected by Earth's magnetic field. The solar particles collide with Earth's atmosphere, triggering nature's most spectacular light show. On the Alaska Range, the northern lights never last long. They are quickly shadowed by clouds and falling snow. Mountaineers must do everything they can to protect themselves against the elements.
Most of the time it snows or it's cloudy. A lot of times you cannot see any mountains around here. Right now you can see everything, but When the weather is bad, everything becomes white.
And the weather is often freezing. Meteorologists say the mountains create their own weather. Denali is high enough to be hit by the jet stream, where winds often race at 80 miles per hour. Think of each peak as a boulder in the middle of a stream of wind. When the wind hits the peak, it swirls around, making what's called a lenticular cloud. Inside this cloud, winds are so strong they can literally push experienced climbers off the mountain. Since 1932, close to 100 people have been killed on Denali. In 1992, the worst storm in a decade hit the mountain. 13 lives were lost in just one season. Climbing in the Alaska Range is filled with risk, swift storms, hidden crevasses, and sudden avalanches. In the United States, Alaska ranks first for deaths due to avalanches. Over the past 20 years, this natural disaster has caused an average of 13 deaths per year. Avalanches start when gravity overcomes friction. Something triggers an unstable snowpack and it tumbles down the slope. That trigger can be a human, like a skier or a snowmobiler, or it can be natural, like a heavy snowfall, fierce winds, or even an earthquake. One of the worst avalanches in Alaska's history crashes down on November 3, 2002. A magnitude 7.9 earthquake causes thousands of acres of rock and snow to tumble. The earthquake strikes on the north side of the Alaska Range, a 135-mile break along part of the fault line. The shock is the strongest ever recorded in the interior of Alaska. The Denali earthquake jolts highways. Cracks more than 20 feet wide appear suddenly on what was once solid ground. The quake sends energy thousands of miles underground and is felt around the world. Within hours, the pattern of gushing geysers in Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming changes. And after traveling over 3,000 miles, the quake's energy rocks boats on Lake Pontchartrain in New Orleans. This earthquake's range is a vivid reminder of the Alaska effect. What happens here reverberates around the world. From the climbers who challenge America's tallest mountain to the fishermen who brave its richest sea, Alaska's extremes reward those who are willing to risk danger. As mountains go, the Alaska Range is young, built about a mere 5 million years ago. The Bering Sea, Alaska's fourth building block, is even younger, but no less extreme. Stretching from Alaska to Russia, the Bering Sea covers more than 1 million square miles. The natives of Alaska call the Bering Sea the birthplace of the winds. The Bering Sea is in the center of one of the planet's worst winter weather systems, the Aleutian Low. The Aleutian Low generates cyclones, vicious winds in excess of 60 miles per hour, and pounding waves 25 feet high. Conditions here are brutal. But fish fill this sea, millions of them. And where there are fish, there are fishermen. Alaska ranks last when it comes to farming, but it leads the nation in fishing. The Bering Sea catch is worth more than $2 billion annually. This one body of water accounts for half of the seafood haul in the United States. The Bering fishery is big business, but the human price of fishing here can be high. Commercial fishing in Alaska is one of the most dangerous occupations in America. In winter, dozens of fishing vessels have run aground or sunk in Alaskan storms. Every year, more than 20 fishermen drown or die of exposure in Alaska's icy seas. In 40 years of fishing in Alaska, Captain Leif Larson has seen it all, including winds as strong as a Category 5 hurricane and waves that threatened to capsize his 100-foot boat.
The sea was blowing and my wind speed meters, it goes to 100. And I thought it would just stop because it pegged over 100 and it never came back. You could see him coming at you like a big mountain, black mountain. And it just came over the bow and filled up the whole boat and hit the house back here where I was sitting. I couldn't see a thing out of a window. And by God, this boat had to be good. I'm still alive.
On the Bering Sea, fishermen have to contend with wind and waves and ice. Ice in the Bering is a double-edged sword. It's a threat to their safety. But it's the reason the fish are here. Ice is the key to the Bering Sea's productivity. Algae grows on the underside of the ice floes. This algae is the base of a huge food web. The Bering supports 450 types of fish, 50 kinds of birds, and 25 species of marine mammals. Sea ice in the Bering develops because it's so far north, and because of the shape of the land below the surface. The northeastern half of the Bering is shallower, less than 500 feet deep. Because it's shallow, ice forms quickly here and covers the sea 8 months out of the year. Spin the Earth back 20,000 years. That's when Earth was going through the last ice age. When the Earth's temperature gets colder, sea levels drop. The Bering Sea becomes exposed land called Beringia, a land bridge connecting Asia and North America. Beringia is a massive dry tundra. Because it's dry, no glaciers form here. Beringia becomes a migration route for mastodons, saber-toothed tigers, and humans. This is one of the first routes that humans used to come to the Americas. Then, around 15,000 years ago, Earth's climate begins to heat up. Sea level rises. Beringia is submerged. Ice and wind and waves all combine to make the Bering a cauldron of violent storms. Storms strong enough to force one of the ocean's biggest ships to run aground. December 2004, a Malaysian freighter, the Selendang Ayu, carries a load of soybeans from Seattle to China. 738 feet long and with over 60,000 tons of cargo, the Selendang Ayu is built to withstand the toughest weather. But it meets its match in the Bering Sea. On the afternoon of December 6th, a storm comes up suddenly. Winds reach 50 miles per hour. Waves tower 30 feet high. In the midst of the storm, the ship's engine fails. Without power, this massive freighter is at the mercy of the winds. The crew of 26 men is set adrift.
Let's know if there are any more people on board the Selendang Ayu.
The first rescue attempt is interrupted when the seas snap an 8-inch thick tow line. Winds continue to push the ship southward. Just off a volcanic island, a submerged rock slices the thick hull like a tin can. The ship breaks in two. The ship's fuel tank ruptures, hemorrhaging more than 300,000 gallons of heavy oil. It's the worst oil spill in Alaska since the Exxon Valdez in 1989. As the storm rages, the Coast Guard succeeds in saving 20 of the ship's crew. Then, in the middle of attempting to lift the last 9 crewmen off the ship, a rogue wave 40 feet tall knocks the helicopter out of the air, smashing it into the icy waves. 6 crewmen are lost. The violent storms that form here also trigger the Alaska effect. Like the energy from earthquakes, energy from violent storms can travel to the other side of the planet. In October 2005, a storm in the Gulf of Alaska generates waves so powerful that they sweep across the Pacific. The waves bypass Hawaii and make their way 8,000 miles to Antarctica. There, they hit an iceberg nearly the size of the state of Rhode Island. This iceberg was one of the largest floating objects on the planet, but it crumbles beneath Alaskan waves. What had taken thousands of years to build up is shattered in hours. Ice is an inescapable part of Alaska. Sea ice threatens the lives of fishermen on the Bering Sea. And ice on land threatens other Alaskans, those who live at the foot of the southeastern glaciers. Alaska's 4th building block, the Bering Sea, is being hammered and chiseled by ice. And so is the 5th piece of this extreme construction project, the southeastern glaciers. There are more than 100,000 glaciers in Alaska, covering an area about the size of South Carolina. Glaciers grow when snow piles up faster than it melts. Glaciers are constantly on the move. They're like rivers of ice flowing steadily downward. The ice in a glacier is young. It takes only about 100 years for the ice to travel from the head of the glacier to its end. Some Alaskan glaciers stop at the sea. When they hit the edge of the water, they break off or calve in huge chunks, some as big as a football field. Tectonic plates build mountains up. Glaciers tear them down. Glaciers are extreme machines in their own right. These icy rivers erode rock, carving deep valleys as they go. Where the glaciers end, they sometimes pile up rock, building spits of land. Glaciers shape landscapes, and they can threaten any community that lies in their path. That's the story of Yakutat, Alaska. Located on the coast more than 600 miles southeast of Anchorage. Yakutat is a fishing village of nearly 700 people. Thousands of years ago, members of the Tlingit tribe settled here, at the base of mountains covered by glaciers.
We do have so many glaciers back in the mountains. This is just like glacier heaven here. There's like over 200 unnamed glaciers.
Glaciers are a fact of life for the Yakutat Tlingit. About 1,000 years ago, their first village is overrun by a glacier, forcing the tribe to move. And now, they may have to move again. Yakutat is currently threatened by the movement of the Hubbard Glacier. The Hubbard Glacier is huge, extending 76 miles back from the sea. At the glacier's face, the ice is roughly 7 miles wide and 300 to 400 feet thick. Unlike most glaciers in Alaska, the Hubbard is growing, not shrinking. Its growth is directly linked to Alaska's weather. Specifically, the violent storms generated in the Gulf of Alaska. Storm clouds come off the sea and are immediately stopped by Alaska's second tallest mountain, Mount St. Elias, at 18,000 feet. The 200-mile-long St. Elias Range is the highest coastal range in the world. From sea level to peak, these mountains are steeper than the Himalayas. When the clouds hit these tall peaks, they drop the moisture as snow. On average, every year, about 200 inches of snow fall in these mountains. In June 2002, an extremely snowy winter makes the Hubbard advance further than usual. The advancing ice builds a dam across the adjacent Russell Fjord. Behind this ice dam, water rises by nearly 66 feet. Yakutat fears the worst. But by August, the dam bursts, sparing the community. But next time, Yakutat might not be so lucky. To keep tabs on the Hubbard's movement, the Army Corps of Engineers is setting up a laser monitoring station. Latest measurements show that the Hubbard is advancing 80 feet per year. If nothing changes, the Hubbard will close off the fjord, creating the largest glacier-dammed lake in North America's recent history. Flooding would force the Tlingit to uproot their village again. But the tribe will not interfere with nature.
The Native people want to let the Hubbard Glacier take its own course. I think we can adopt and change our way of life.
Nature's geological forces have spent hundreds of millions of years building the 5 basic blocks of Alaska. But the next phase of construction may be in our hands. Call it the human effect. Most scientists believe as we increase the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, we in turn speed up climate change. In the lower 48, the average temperature has increased 1 degree over the past 100 years. But in Alaska, the increase has been about 3 times that, nearly 3 degrees Fahrenheit. And winter temperatures are even hotter, rising by as much as 5 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit over the last 50 years. Alaska is caught in a reinforcing cycle. When the sunlight hits snow and ice, it mostly gets reflected back into space. But as the ice and snow melt from warmer temperatures, they're replaced by brown earth and open water, which absorb about 80% of the sun's energy. Alaska is feeling the heat. Insects once kept in check by cold winters are now flourishing in the warmer weather and destroying millions of acres of forest. In the north, permanently frozen ground is starting to thaw. And in the southeast, glaciers are melting. Today, 95% of these glaciers are shrinking. Melting glaciers could have the biggest Alaska effect ever. Melting ice adds more water to the ocean, making sea level rise. Currently, sea level has increased by nearly a foot over the past 100 years. Higher sea levels bring storm surges that punish coastal communities. Alaska's melting glaciers could spell disaster for millions of people living on coastlines around the world.
The earthquake is located 45 miles southeast of Denali Park, Alaska.
The next round of geological construction is underway. Alaska's future is likely to be as tumultuous and awe-inspiring as its past. These mountains will keep growing. These volcanoes will keep exploding. This Earth will keep shaking. The building of extreme Alaska is far from over.